Greetings, conquerors. Welcome back. Welcome to session 2 of our Level Up series, our Level Up classes, or our workouts. That's a better way to say it, a workout. So we're not gonna waste no time. Let's just get right into it. So the last time we did a session, my suggestion was that or the assignment was to write our names down and write down the things that we just can't stand about that individual. And then the B part of that request was that we determine whether or not we want to evolve from that person, or if we want to just kind of stay the same, with the understanding that there are consequences with either way we decide to go. So I'm hoping that you've done that, or maybe you're still in that process, and that's okay too, because since we're doing it in a setting like this, you can grow at your own pace. However, we are at week 2, and we're going to honor our commitment and go ahead and just kind of get this in. So last time we dealt with who am I. This time we're going to deal with where do I go from here. Okay, where do I go from here? In other words, now that I have the information, right? Because I'm always getting information. Now, what do I do with it, right? One of the problems with church, and I'm not downing church, okay, because I believe in that lifestyle. But one of the problems with church is there's a lot of information that goes out. But there's not a lot of opportunities for life application. We just kind of leave it up to you. You know, some dude in a French cuff shirt will get up and tell you what to do, but then when it comes to the sort of the how to, then it's just kind of left up to us. So we're gonna get into some of that. As always, we're gonna be short. We'll get right to it, so that you can get on with your life. So where do I go from here? Okay, so consider the possibility that you're standing in a street, okay, and you have a forward direction and you have a side to side. Okay, so you're kind of canvassing the area and you're trying to figure out, okay, so where do I go from here? This is a big deal, because assuming that we don't want to go backwards, assuming that we've made the decision to move forward in one of these directions, assuming that backwards is just not an option, what do we do? How do I choose this? What's happening? So my personal position, and we haven't gotten into Bible yet. We're going down that road. We haven't gotten there yet. But I don't want to impose that on anybody, because that's my lifestyle. Okay? Although I believe it's correct, I'm not going to try to impose that on you right now. So once we get there, I would probably say just let the Most High sort of guide your decision making. Okay? That's what I would say, and that's what I mean. Okay, but before we get there, let's just kind of stay with us. Let's just kind of stay with you and me. So I'm looking forward, I'm looking side to side, I'm trying to figure out, okay, so then what is it that I want to do now? Where do I want to go? What's the healthiest, what's the best road? See, and at this point, I'm not talking about your business life. I'm not talking about your financial life. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about on the inside, which direction are you gonna go? Okay, cause this way is I'm deciding I'm gonna have a little more edge. I've been timid for a while, and I'm gonna have a little more edge. All right, this way I've had all of the edge, and now I'm thinking about being a little more timid. But straightforward is a word called balance. And balance is the direction that you and I should be striving for. Because if you are a person that's all edge, then you're bound to mess something up just because of the edge. In other words, There's some people that might encounter you that might actually help you. There's some people, there's some relationships that might actually be beneficial for us, but they might not want to fool with you because of all of the edge. Okay, there are some relationships that might happen that they might not want to fool with you because they think you are entirely too timid. Okay, because their personality just won't work, and they're under the impression that when it comes time to make some really tough decisions, you might not be able to because you're so doggone timid. Okay, and I'm not talking about reserved and meek. I'm talking about timid. In other words, when something comes up, or something that looks like it might be confrontational, you shrink. When people start to roar, instead of standing your ground, you just kind of shrink and go into a hole. Or the other side of it, when somebody gets up and start running off at the mouth, then you pop off too, and then all it becomes is an argument and nothing productive happens. So my suggestion today is, and my assignment for all of us today is that we try to find the balance. Okay, so if you've looked at your list, if you've gone through your sort of character traits, okay, so how do we find the balance? Okay, let's just, for the sake of this class, let's sort of close the curtain or shut the door on the two side directions, and let's focus on the forward direction where the balance is. Okay, so the worst thing that can happen is that everybody in the world knows you as a great guy except your own family. Worst thing in the world is for everybody to know you as this strong, upbeat, ambitious lady, but everybody in the world knows that, but nobody at home knows you that way. Okay, so what do? My business life is exploding, but my family life is crumbling. Or my family life is crumbling, and yet, or my family life is striving rather, and my business life or my ministry life is crumbling. Okay, so everything that God has put in front of us, okay, if we look at it correctly, it's all about the balance. So how do we determine that? Okay, so here we go. We're going to get into some mechanics. Okay, I want you to write down again. We're going to always have homework, okay? I want you to write some things down. Write down about how many hours a week you spend working. Just write it down. And even if you don't know accurately because your schedule tends to fluctuate, that's okay. Just write down a ballpark figure. And I'm talking about working. I'm talking about if you got a 9 to 5, that. I'm talking about if you do additional things, if you own a company as well. I'm talking about how many minutes or how many hours do you spend working on that? How many times are you physically functioning in a working environment? That includes church. Write all that stuff down and come up with a number. Decide what that number is. And then I want you to put another thing. I want you to write down your family time or your personal time if you don't have a family. Write that down. I write these things side by side. How many hours you work, how many hours you spend with your family or your personal time, and look at the differences in the numbers. Okay? If one is completely greater than the other, then that means you're already out of balance. That means your whole life is out of balance, which could be the reason why you have so many things going on that feel uncomfortable or it feels out of whack. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, every time things are out of balance, okay, it's not a great experience. Something always feels out of sync. You always feel you're being pulled in one direction or another. In other words, you work all day, and then somebody wants to spend some time with you, but you can't because you're too tired. Or you're spending a lot of time, a lot of personal time, a lot of family time. But then when it's time to get some work done, you can't because you can't focus because you got your mind on the personal stuff. Okay, so both of these are necessary for our quality of life. In other words, if you want to avoid being homeless, you're going to have some income of some kind coming in, right? And if you want to avoid sort of a lonely existence, for those of you who need the human interaction and you enjoy absorbing sort of the life energy from other other human beings, you're going to have that as well. So then how do you find the balance? Okay, so first of all, write the numbers down. Write them down. Get them in your face, because it's all about the math right now. Just write this down. And so once you've seen what you are doing, what you're dealing with, then okay, so let's go through it and figure out how you can create that balance. Because essentially all you have to do is you have to subtract one and add it to the other. You have to take some of those minutes, some of those man hours, subtract it from one side and add it to the other. Okay, and one should inevitably increase while the other one decreases. So in other words, what should be happening is, while you're going through your numbers, you should go from this, right, inevitably to this. And this is when we have our balance. Okay, so before we get there though, you got to determine if you want the balance or not. You got to determine if balance is something that's important to you. Because I'm convinced this is not the first time that you've heard about this. I'm convinced this is not the first time that you've gone through this. Okay? So, again, write down how many man hours you spend working, and write down how much time you spend with either personal time or your family time, okay? And the reason I'm saying it this way, because I know there's some church person back there saying, well, he ain't said nothing about God, he ain't said about your time with Jesus and all of that. Okay, number one, we're going to get into that in another session. But number two, you might just find church being in there somewhere. And you might just find I spend time usher board, I spend time deacon's ministry, I spend time studying the word because I have to preach, or I spend time going to a bunch of conferences. Write all of that down. Write it down for real, write it down honestly, and then what you'll find is that you'll find your whole life might be on one side of the page, and you have almost nothing on the other side, and then we might be able to figure out why your life seems to be just about out of control and why it is so empty. Because there's too much going on one side of your life rather than the other. Okay, now again, this is what I want, because we're done. Number one, I want you to focus on the road going straight. That's the balanced road, okay? And then I want you to write down all of the man hours that you spend working. I want you to write down all the man hours that you spend in your personal or your family time, okay? And then I want you to go through that stuff honestly, okay? And figure out where you can subtract from one so that you can add to the other. Okay, so that our only goal, our only intent is to just get the numbers and get everything in front of us before we move forward. One of the greatest things about life is the preparation for where we want to go. Okay, so I can't tell you that I want you to fly if I don't teach you how to do it first. I can't tell you to do something without giving you some instruction first. Okay? All right. So your man hours at work, your man hours in your personal time or your family time, and figure out where we can find our balance. Okay? That's all we got for this next for this particular session. We'll see you next time.